Hi, everybody, and welcome to our review of the final project. So this is the actual template that is available to you. You do not have to use the same design or even PowerPoint, but you do need to follow the same order in order to finish the project. So again, you are not limited to using this template, but I do ask that you follow the template format as far as the order of material and that you use APA format. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at, so on this, on the title slide, of course, you would change the title to be the title of your research proposal, your name or names if you're working in a team, and then citing that you're from University of the Cumberlands. First things first, you're going to do a background and study. This should be an overview of the literature, not citations or quotes from different studies. At the doctoral level, you really need to be analyzing the literature and synthesizing the literature versus copying the literature. So I don't want to see any direct quotes. What I would like to see is an overview of a large body of literature. So we ideally recommend that you have anywhere from 25 to 50 articles, peer-reviewed articles, peer-reviewed presentations to form the basis. It's really a better idea to come into this with an open mind instead of looking for evidence to support an idea you already have. If you let the literature guide you, and this is true for this project and also for your actual dissertation, if you let the literature guide you, you'll be a lot less frustrated and the literature will do a lot of the work for you through the synthesis and discerning what is still needed, what are the gaps, what do we still need to know. All right, so first thing with your background and study, provide a hook. Why should we care about it? And then you give the brief synopsis of the literature. Again, it's not a theme of the literature if it's only stated in one study. I usually talk about literature reviews being much like having like a barbecue or a cocktail party, and you invite a bunch of the authors over and you talk about their research, and the next day you come to my office to tell me about the event you had. You're not going to repeat what every single person said in quotes or even summarize what each person said. Instead, you're going to summarize, guest A and guest B and guest not N all had this in common, and this is what they said about this. But you know what, guest M and O, they really didn't agree, and here's why. So you want to synthesize what you learn from the literature. You want to present a theoretical framework for your study. So what theory is going to be the lens through which you look at the data that you collect? What is the statistical evidence of a societal issue that we should care about? Making sure that these are current statistics. So really needs to be within the last 5 years, if at all possible. Then you'll finish with a problem statement. So in your presentation, summarize what that problem statement is in a very succinct, concise sentence. This is what the issue is, the large world issue. And how does that issue connect with one of the 5 required domains for doctoral study in a CES program? So that's going to be the background of your study. Then you go to your purpose of your study and research design. The purpose of your study is what your study is going to do. So the problem statement is the large societal issue, but we can't fix everything in a societal issue, but we can focus on a specific aspect of it and what that would require. So that is part of this purpose statement. Okay, my apologies, I got an interruption. So with the purpose statement, it's stating what your study is going to do. It's not the larger social issue, but the specific aspects of what you're going to be targeting about that social aspect. It should really start out with the purpose of this study is to, and ideally you're going to integrate the research design into that. Research design is quasi-experimental, experimental, correlational, predictive. What type of design are you going to use? Hint, we really don't have too much in our field that we can do in an experimental format. And in order for it to be doctoral level, it needs to be a bit complex. So it needs to have some layers to it. So typically, but not always, we usually do not focus on t-tests. We usually go to something a little bit heavier or more advanced in t-tests. So that is our purpose study and research design, making sure you also provide a couple of lines of why this is the most appropriate research design for your study. Research questions and hypothesis. So state exactly what your research question is. Hint, it is the purpose statement in a question format. Don't change it. You want to be consistent with your language. This is a very common error. So if the purpose of my quasi-experimental study is to examine anxiety scores of 8th graders pre and post an end of grade test after participating in a yoga meditation series, then my research question is simply going to be, is there a difference in anxiety scores of 8th graders who are participating in end-of-grade testing who have also engaged in yoga meditation series? Don't change the language. Your language needs to be the same. And you want to make sure that you identify all of your dependent and independent variables, and that the same thing's true with your hypothesis. Your hypothesis or hypotheses should be reflective of being a null hypothesis, because that's the hypothesis we test. So there is no difference in the anxiety scores of 8th graders who are engaging in end-of-grade testing, who have also participated in a yoga meditation series. That's my null hypothesis. And remember, you're trying to disprove the null hypothesis. That's what we do in statistics. Instruments are very important. You need to make sure you have an instrument for each one of your variables, independent and dependent variables. If you create a instrument, you need to validate that instrument. And that instrument can be validated through a pilot test or through a Delphi study, but you have to explain how you would validate any type of instrument that you create. I can provide additional information if anybody needs that on that. If you're using a standardized or a pre-existing instrument, you need to demonstrate that that instrument is valid for the age and population that you are currently proposing that you're going to do your research with. You need to provide validity and reliability statistics specific to that population. You need to talk about any field tests that have been done. That would be in articles and whatnot that talk about the instrument and how you know this instrument is appropriate. You want to make sure that I can find your instrument and others can find your instrument, but you never, ever, ever want to copy somebody's instrument without their permission. So you would never put a copy of it in your study, presentation, proposal without written signed permission. So you want to make sure that you are being true to that, to the authors of the instrument. You also cite and reference instruments because you want to give credit to the work that has been done. Many standardized instruments like the BAC or like the Columbia, they tell you exactly what question or what like items within their instrument you can use when describing the instrument. They'll say you can use questions 5, 10, and 15, for example. And those are the ones you can use to give examples of what the questions might be like, because you have to describe the scale, the type of question asked, if there's domains within the instrument, what are those, and how do they relate to your research? So you need to show that this instrument matches both the population and what you're trying to measure. Okay. Then data collection. Oftentimes students will combine data collection and data analysis, and I'm going to really stress that you not do that because these are different and they need to be treated separately. So data collection is our step-by-step procedure from the moment we reach out to a participant, from sampling to how we're going to get our sample, who's going to make up our sample, what are the delimitations of that sample, who will or will not be in the sample, all the way through informed consent, all the way through data collection. How are you going to get your data? What is going to be the process? I should be able to replicate your study just the way you imagined it without ever having to ask you a question by reading your sample or your data collection. And so this is what we're going to do to get our data. Okay. The next thing is data analysis. And this is how we're going to organize our data, process our data, prepare the data, and actually what analyses will be conducted on the data and how so. So if I'm going to use SPSS, what am I going to run? What's it going to look like? What are going to be the 8 steps of hypothesis testing that I use? Is there any additional tests like effect size or post hoc that I will need to run as well? So you need to talk about the whole process and what you can expect to gain from the data analysis. So for example, if I'm running an ANOVA, which we'll be learning about, if I'm running an ANOVA, it's only going to tell me if there's a difference. And ANOVA doesn't tell me where the difference is. So if I get a significant mathematical result showing there is a difference, I would then also have to run effect size to determine if it's meaningful and a post hoc to determine exactly where the difference is. So stats are often in stages. Then we're going to have an expected findings section of your presentation. You will use your research questions to guide this. You shouldn't have any sub questions, but you should have research questions. The goal is to think about what we already know in the literature and what we anticipate our findings would be. So there'll be citations and support for this as well. Finally, we'll have ethical considerations. The ethical considerations, you need to specify what ethical code or codes will be used to guide the research. What's the rationale for selecting that code or codes? What key standards apply? And then you're going to apply them and not just quote them. It's not enough to quote. In fact, it's discouraged to quote. You should, think about in your own words, why is this standard important? And then cite the standard, not quote it. And then we will have references, and references should be in APA format. All right, so I hope this tutorial has been helpful. Please let me know if you have any questions or concerns. We'll be talking about this a bit more in class.